always thought that working at Charley's Philly Steaks would be a dream job. A prestigious restaurant nestled in the heart of the city, it was renowned for its mouth-watering cheese steaks and impeccable service. Yet, as I look back on those days, I shiver at the memories of what transpired within those walls. My name is Alex, and I was an employee at Charley's for 5 years. I started as a dishwasher, scrubbing pots and pans until my fingers wrinkled like prunes. But my dedication and hard work eventually earned me a place at the front of the house. I became a server, navigating the bustling dining room, taking orders, and serving dishes to the eager customers who flocked to Charley's. At first, everything seemed perfect. The restaurant's dimly lit interior exuded an air of sophistication. The soft jazz music played in the background, and the tantalizing aroma of sizzling steak and sauteed onions hung in the air. The ambiance was enchanting, drawing in patrons from all corners of the city. But as time passed, I began to notice something strange about Charley's, something that sent a shiver down my spine. It all started with the whispers. Faint, almost indistinguishable, like the soft rustling of leaves in a gentle breeze. At first, I thought it was my imagination playing tricks on me. After all, Charley's was always busy, and the low hum of conversation was constant. But these whispers were different. They seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, like secrets buried within the restaurant's very structure. One evening, as I was clearing a table, I heard it again. The whisper was clearer this time, and it sent a shiver down my spine. It sounded like a woman's voice, pleading, almost desperate. I couldn't make out the words, but the anguish in that voice was unmistakable. I looked around, but there was no one nearby. The other servers bustled about, oblivious to the eerie presence that seemed to linger in the air. I tried to dismiss it as a figment of my imagination, but the whispers persisted. They grew louder, more insistent, and I could no longer ignore them. I confided in my fellow employees, but they shrugged it off, attributing it to the stress of a busy restaurant. They said I was overworked, that my mind was playing tricks on me. But I knew better. One evening, after the dinner rush had subsided, I decided to investigate. I ventured into the labyrinthine passages that led to the kitchen, the storage rooms, and the basement. As I descended into the dimly lit cellar, I felt a wave of unease wash over me. The air grew cooler, and the flickering fluorescent lights cast eerie shadows on the damp walls. The whispers were more pronounced here, echoing off the cold stone walls. I followed the sound, my heart pounding in my chest. It led me to a corner of the cellar, where a rusted metal door stood half ajar. The whispers seemed to emanate from behind that door, and I couldn't resist the compulsion to investigate further. With trembling hands, I pushed the door open. What I saw within will haunt me for the rest of my days. The room beyond was small and windowless, illuminated only by the feeble glow of a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. In the center of the room, there was a tattered old armchair, its once plush upholstery now mottled with age. But what drew my attention, what sent a chill coursing through my veins, was the wall opposite the chair. It was covered in photographs. Hundreds of them, maybe even thousands, arranged in haphazard fashion. They were old, faded, and yellowed with time. Each photograph depicted a different scene: families smiling at the camera, friends posing on a beach, couples on their wedding day. But there was something unsettling about these photographs. The faces, they all seemed haunted, their eyes filled with sorrow, and their smiles appeared forced, as if they were hiding a terrible secret. I reached out to touch one of the photographs, and as my fingers brushed the surface, I was overcome by a wave of emotion. It was as though the pain and despair of the people in the photograph seeped into my very being. I stumbled back, my heart racing, and that's when I heard the whispers again. They were no longer distant, they were all around me, a cacophony of voices, a chorus of suffering. I fled the cellar, my mind in turmoil, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I had stumbled upon something malevolent within the walls of Charley's Philly steaks. I began to research the history of the restaurant, hoping to find some explanation for the strange occurrences. It was then that I discovered the dark truth. Charley's had been in operation for decades, and it had a storied past. The restaurant had changed ownership many times, and each owner had faced financial ruin and personal tragedy. Families had been torn apart, marriages had crumbled, and lives had been destroyed. But what sent a chill down my spine was the connection between these tragedies and the photographs I had found in the cellar. As I delved deeper into the restaurant's history, I uncovered a pattern. The photographs were of the previous owners and their families, and it seemed that each owner had experienced a profound tragedy shortly after taking over Charley's. There were accidents, illnesses, and even suicides. The restaurant had a dark history of misfortune, and it seemed that the whispers in the walls were the voices of those who had suffered within these very walls. I couldn't ignore the mounting evidence. The restaurant was cursed, and it seemed that the spirits of the past owners and their families were trapped within its confines, their anguish echoing through the years. But I couldn't simply walk away from Charley's. It was my livelihood, and I needed the job to survive. As the days turned into weeks, I became increasingly obsessed with the whispers and the photographs. I spent countless hours in the cellar, trying to communicate with the restless spirits. I brought in a paranormal investigator, but even he was unable to provide any answers. The whispers grew louder, more frantic, and I could no longer sleep at night, haunted by the faces in the photographs and the tormented voices that echoed in my mind. One evening, as I stood in the cellar, I heard a voice that was different from the others. It was clear, distinct, and it spoke my name. "Alex," it said, and I turned to see a photograph that seemed to have materialized out of thin air. It was a portrait of a man in his 40s, and he looked at me with eyes that seemed to pierce my very soul. "Alex, you must help us," the voice implored. "You are our only hope." I was paralyzed with fear, but I couldn't ignore the plea in the man's eyes. "How can I help you?" I whispered. The man's voice was filled with sorrow as he explained. "The curse that binds us to this place can only be broken if Charley's is sold to a new owner, someone with no connection to the past. You must find a buyer, Alex. You must save us." I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "I'll do it," I promised. With renewed determination, I began to search for a buyer, someone who would take over Charley's and release the spirits trapped within its walls. It was a daunting task, but I couldn't let the tortured souls of the past owners suffer any longer. Months passed, and I finally found a prospective buyer, a wealthy entrepreneur from out of town who had no knowledge of the restaurant's dark history. The deal was set, and as the date of the sale approached, the whispers in the walls grew more frantic. The spirits seemed to sense that their release was imminent, and their voices filled the restaurant with an eerie, otherworldly chorus. The night before the sale, I stood in the cellar one last time, surrounded by the photographs and the anguished voices of the past. "Thank you," I whispered, tears in my eyes. "I hope you find peace." As I turned to leave, a cold hand brushed against my shoulder, and I froze. The man from the photograph, the one who had spoken to me, stood before me, his eyes filled with gratitude. He reached out and placed something in my hand, a small, tarnished key. "Take this," he said. "It will open the door to our freedom." With that, he faded away, and the cellar fell silent. I clutched the key in my hand, a sense of peace washing over me. I knew that I had done what I could to help the restless spirits of Charley's fakes. The next day, the sale of the restaurant went through, and the new owner took possession. I watched as the sign above the entrance was changed, and Charley's Philly steaks became something else entirely. The whispers had ceased, and the photographs in the cellar had disappeared, as if they had never existed. I walked away from Charley's with a heavy heart, knowing that I would never forget the haunting experience that had unfolded within its walls. The restaurant was no longer the prestigious establishment it had once been, but I took solace in the fact that the curse had been broken, and the souls of the past owners and their families could finally rest in peace. As I walked away, I couldn't help but wonder how many other places held dark secrets, their histories hidden behind a facade of normalcy. Charley's Philly steaks had taught me that sometimes the most terrifying horrors are the ones that exist in plain sight, concealed within the walls of the places we least expect.